Hello, you're watching the Cloud Native Telco Summit, part of our year-round DSP Leaders coverage. I'm Guy Daniels, and today's panel discussion looks at ways to fast-track to a Cloud Native Telco. Because despite all of the work that's been done in this area, a great many telcos have yet to start the evolution towards Cloud Native. Some are still debating why Cloud Native is needed, and others are evaluating the best way to implement this strategy. But don't worry, because we have a panel of expert guests to help answer the burning questions. And I'm pleased to say that joining me on the programme today are Partha Sitala, who is President of the Cloud Business Unit at Rakuten Symphony, Mirko Voltolini, who is VP of Innovation at Colt Technology, Peter Verndl, who is Senior Expert Deployment Architectures for Ericsson Cloud Software and Services, Matt Halligan, Chief Technology Officer at Optiva, and Mattias Fridström, who is Vice President and Chief Evangelist for Arelion. Hello everyone, it's good to see you all again. Lots to talk about on today's panel, and I'd like to start by asking a fundamental question, which is, why is Cloud Native needed? What are the benefits to a telco? And Partha, we had a similar discussion at DSP Leaders World Forum earlier this year. So perhaps you could start by saying to us, why is Cloud Native needed?
Yeah, certainly, Guy. And first of all, thanks for having me back on your panel. It's always a pleasure to talk to luminaries like our guest today. So it's a very good question. Why cloud native and what are its benefits? Before actually answering that question, maybe it's important for us to kind of understand what transformation is happening in the industry and what challenges operators are facing. So there is a shift that's happening where the operators are looking at softwareization of their telco network, which essentially means that they would like to consume the vendor's applications in a pure software form so that they can be deployed in a commodity hardware environment, right? Essentially, it drives down costs, it gives them better economic leverage and so on. Now, the problem is, before Cloud Native came along, if you had to do something like this, there was no standard, right? And all these vendors would bring in their applications packaged in a very dissimilar manner, which essentially means that it was very difficult to deploy these applications in a timely manner. The second thing is that it would be very difficult for them to manage the life cycle of these applications, whether it's upgrades or scaling and high availability and so on. So that was a fundamental problem to begin with, right? Because all these vendors, whether it is a RAN vendor or a core vendor or what have you, right? Whether it is MEC applications, each of them did their software build in a very different manner. Now, what Cloud Native does is that it's an opinionated way in which applications are built. Now, while anything that's opinionated is not usually seen favorably, there is actually a huge benefit if you go down this path. So if you go down this path of opinionated, software application building, then you would essentially each vendor would package their applications and its dependencies in what is called as containers and microservices. Now, when you do it that way, then deployment of these applications becomes a lot easier because the dependencies come along with the software itself. That's a first benefit, right, that Cloud Native offers through containers and microservices. The second benefit is because it's opinionated, it also determines, how these applications need to be lifecycle managed, which is how do you need to upgrade them. So there's a very consistent methodology through which you would upgrade, for example, your RAN applications and core applications and so on. So it's basically multi-domain consistency across your different application classes. That's the second benefit. The third benefit is high availability, right? And high availability is, of course, resiliency is very important. Now imagine if all your vendors are bringing in their own tools to monitor and own tools to, make sure that their applications are resilient to failures. It's a nightmare for the operator to go manage all these different toolings and tools, right? In fact, to staff them up to be able to manage that. So what Cloud Native offers, the third benefit, is a consistent pattern through which you can manage the monitoring and the high availability of these applications. Now, of course, the operators benefit clearly because they have one consistent, tooling / workflow management for different applications across the different domains. It's also beneficial to the vendors because it essentially makes it much more easier for them to deploy their applications. It does not become, months and years long projects. You can essentially, if done well, if done in the right way, you could essentially deploy a complex network function in a matter of days or weeks. So it's a huge benefit to the vendors themselves, because essentially the revenue recognition, the deployment and the implementation is much faster if you go down the path of cloud native.
Great, Partha. Thanks very much for that. Obviously, a lot of benefits there, different benefits, all based around the changes that the telcos are going through. I know our other guests want to come in on this question as well. So let me start off with Mattias. Mattias, let me come to you and allow you to pick up on this opening question about why it's needed.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what he said, and of course, the flexibility and the scalability of being in the cloud and the cloud native and all what it comes with is, of course, very, very good. But I would also say that the last couple of years, the relationship within the wholesale carrier community has changed a bit, and we're much more interacting with customers, with suppliers, with everyone really in there. And I would say cloud native have really helped us here in the interaction. Obviously, everyone wants to have APIs into everyone's systems and so on. And cloud native has really been good here. We can now allow customers to look into our systems in a much better way than before. And that has really helped by cloud native. In the same way as we want to do when we buy from others, we want to see much more, we have Colt here. Colt is a big supplier to us. We want to use Colt. We want to be connected to them so that we can have a very good interaction in between us. Those things are very much helped with cloud natives. I would say, apart from the flexibility and kind of the lower cost, which we hope for, I would say the interaction between operators have also been helped by this. And that's a huge benefit to us and most of us in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Mattias. That's very good to hear. Now, you mentioned Colt there, so let's go across to Mirko and get some of Mirko's comments about the benefits of cloud native to a telco.
Thanks, guys. So maybe just to add also some background, stepping back for a moment from the technology aspect of cloud native. If I reflect on the environment that telcos are in at the moment, has changed quite a lot from the past. Application development, IT, has become really key to the business model of telecom operators. If I reflect on what used to be the case in the past, the network and our products used to be the only important element of what we were taking to customers. And so all the development was focused on integration and bringing those capabilities out to our customers. Now, the shift has been that IT now sits front and center to our customers, because as Mattias was mentioning, we are now exposing services in a different manner. So portals and APIs are the tangible examples of that that the change has shifted. So now I think you can say IT and application development has become equally as important as the network. And I think back to the questions, cloud native is a way for us to increase the agility to develop our capabilities.
Yeah, thanks, Mirko. The business benefits there as well of cloud native, of course. And Peter, let's come across to you, because obviously you're very closely associated with what's going on in the cloud native world with your role in the software aspects at Ericsson there. So what can you add to why cloud native is so needed?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that there's very different aspects of benefits we can enable with cloud native. And I think we've also seen that the benefits are in different areas. And I think the most important thing is to look at the cloud native transformation as a more holistic transformation, not only about applying a particular application design or introducing Kubernetes into the network, but it's really about technology, which is Kubernetes, which is application design. It's the supporting management systems and tools, but it's also ways of working. I think a lot of the efficiency gains and the agility, which we just described, they can only arise if we change in a holistic way. If we have the right technology, the right cloud native technology, and we adopt the ways of working to actually leverage those benefits coming out from that technology. I think this is an important aspect to add on top, that this is not only a technology transformation, but it's really a holistic transformation.
Yeah, nicely said, Peter. Thank you very much for that. Matt, did you want to come in on this opening question as well about the benefits and the need of cloud native?
So I kind of want to take it at a slightly different angle, because I think you mentioned at the start, our expectation was a lot more progress than maybe what we came in the last 5 years. And why is that? And I think Peter touched on it, that, to be truly cloud native and to benefit from it, the applications need to actually have a transformation themselves, and the vendors need to be open to that investment. And I think a little bit of a disappointment that the telcos have had is the promise was there, but the realization with some of the applications that they brought into their cloud didn't realize that promise. As well as also, I think, not appreciating the transformation outside of technology that their organizations had to go through. So I think it's worth us appreciating that lift and shift, which is a term we've heard quite regularly, is predominant in the marketplace. And that has actually, I think, dampened the momentum of the adoption of truly getting the benefit of cloud native. And as an application vendor, I think it's important that, there is that visibility into where are the vendors, how did the telcos know what to look for, and making sure they truly get the benefits that the rest of the panelists highlighted in the session. Because if you don't actually truly evolve your technology to being cloud native, and native being the key term, you won't see those efficiencies all the way from the operations side into the business side.
No, absolutely. Yes. Thanks very much for that, Matt. And great range of insights and opinions from our guests on that opening question. Well, let's move on to our next point, and that's about defining the vision, and how should senior executive management define the overall vision, and what is the scope of a cloud native transformation project? Mirko, have you got any insights into what this vision is and how you should scope it?
Yeah, thanks. Yes, I think it's fundamental to set up a vision. Actually, I would even remove cloud native transformation, cloud native from the transformation. This is a general transformation. I think Peter already mentioned that we need to treat this as a holistic project across the board. It involves the whole company, involves the organization at all levels. So it is important to apply the general techniques that this type of change will bring to the company. And so setting the vision is the first step. Without a vision, I think there are clear indication that transformations will fail. It's the first step you should be putting in place. Other important things, again, as you drive a transformation, is involve the right level of stakeholders. So there has to be a set of champions in the company that drive this activity, and again, needs to be pervasive across the board. Transparency is also quite important, making sure that the whole company understand what it means. I think often when I have seen transformation happening and not proceeding very well, is that very generic statements are being made from the top, and then people try to wonder what exactly means for them. And so it's about making sure that there is clarity about what needs to happen. I think the vision can be different depending on the type of changes you're going to make. And I think we'll cover maybe more details what exactly the scope should be. But depending on what you cover, it could be maybe focus on a specific area, maybe focusing on, I don't know, sales transformation, moving your applications to a cloud native environment. And in that case, the scope will be limited to that, or could be a broader end-to-end overall change across the company. So more a big bang type of approach.
Great. Thanks very much, Mirko, for that. So, wrapped up in overall transformation projects from the telco as well. Hopefully we'll hear more, and we'll get our audience to send in their experiences as well, and we can answer those or address those in a live Q&A show later. But Partha, let's come across to you for your observations on scoping a cloud native transformation project.
Yeah, so I want to bring in the perspective of both an operator and a vendor, right? So coming from Rakuten, I find myself in this position, a unique position, that on one side we are as a company an operator because we have Rakuten Mobile. On the other hand, we are also a supplier, a vendor, because we have Rakuten Symphony. So one of the things that I've observed, right, not just in the telco world, but also outside of telco and the enterprises, when there's a transformative technology that comes, to the scene, the general belief is that, everybody needs to change at the same time, right? There is a desire for perfection. But in this pursuit of perfection, you essentially make, perfect an enemy of the good, right? And the reason I say this is, first and foremost, right, as an operator, if the operator believes that there is a benefit in cloud native, and clearly I can tell you from our own experience that the benefits are huge, right? Whether it is cost or agility or efficiency, whatever it is, right? You cannot really wait for all the vendors also to make that leap, because that leap requires them to essentially re-architect and re-platform their applications, right? And this is very critical, because while that transformation is happening, even the operator needs to train their own ops teams, right? Their site reliability engineering teams, or whatever you want to call it, network operations teams, to be adept at actually managing these technologies. And the vendors, right? I mean, they have legacy for like what, 20, 30 years they've been building these applications. If you tell them to essentially re-architect that into cloud native, it's going to take time. So I think the most pragmatic thing, and this is the thing critical here, right? The most pragmatic thing is, first, the operator has to standardize on the cloud native platform. Everybody understands that is Kubernetes these days. You pick a distribution of Kubernetes that allows you to bridge this gap between the old world and the new world seamlessly, which means that the platform that the operator picks should be able to support VNFs as well as CNFs on Kubernetes, so that the starting point is your ops team is ready when everybody essentially makes a shift to CNFs en masse, right? And that's going to take some time. The second thing is, when the operators are bringing in a new vendor, right, telling them that, oh, you need to adhere to all these 12 principles of cloud native, it is not happening. I think it's not at all pragmatic. Essentially, the vendors need to come in with, even if they are 5 out of 12, right, if they are cloud native and the other ones are not, as long as the basic management is handled through cloud native tooling, whether it is deployment and upgrades, that's a good starting point. Then would be monitoring. That's the second starting point, right? So I think that kind of a pragmatic approach, I think, is very critical. And if you don't do this, right, and if I think the operators wait for, and as a vision, if they say, oh, we need to transform, we have to be 100% cloud native, it is not happening. Unfortunately, that operator will be left behind. And it's also, when the world completely moves to true cloud native, their teams would not actually essentially have been trained on, in fact, how to manage cloud native too. So it would have been too late by then. So let's not make perfect the enemy of good, right? And take a very pragmatic approach. I think as a vision, I think that's very critical.
Great. Thanks very much, Partha, for that. Well, related to that question really is about what help and advice operators can get. Are there best practice roadmaps that can be used and implemented in this transformation process? And if so, are there any challenges that come with implementing roadmaps like that? Mattias, what are your thoughts on following best practice and established roadmaps?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very important aspect of this. And I think Mirko mentioned champions and transparency. And I think that's really what it comes down to. I think we in Arelion have just gone through this. As you know, we were sold by Telia 2 years ago. We had 258 IT systems stuck in Telia that we had to move out. And obviously, this decision was to move as much to the cloud, but also try to make systems more cloud native. Systems moved into the cloud, it doesn't have to be cloud native. But I think what we need, what was important for us is, of course, the transparency around this and really telling everyone that this is now going to change. It's going to change fast, but it's not going to change as fast as everyone wants. It's going to change with a pace of the most important stuff first. Previously, an IT project was, okay, off you go, come back in 2 years' time and implement the new system and hope everything is working. Now it's more like, okay, we can drop things on a monthly, weekly basis. And there are people who's constantly disappointed in the office because their stuff is not coming. But I think transparency and champions and showing people that things can happen much quicker, much faster. It can happen on a weekly basis. It doesn't need to be major things, but it'd be small things to become better all the time. I think what we have learned is transparency from the IT department and the full buy-in of everyone is by far the best practice we can offer to everyone. that's the best way going forward here. Showing everyone that we are on a weekly basis getting better. It might not be exactly what everyone needs at the time, but there's usually someone that needs this, and then keep on going like that. So much more transparency from the IT department and a bigger buy-in from everyone. That's absolutely the best practice we can see from our side here.
Great, thanks for that insight there, Mattias. Well, let me first of all go across to Peter for your observations and your comments about using best practice, roadmaps, etc.
So I think the cloud native ecosystem or cloud native community is, from its nature and from its background, an extremely open community. There's a lot of technology openly available, which we're all adapting. I mean, Kubernetes has just been named as one of the forefront technologies helping us to build a cloud native environment. And so are best practices shared. There's a very vivid community, actually going beyond just the telco area, discussing cloud native and sharing best practices, sharing how technologies are being adopted, but also sharing how processes are being changed to leverage these types of technologies, how to optimize software delivery, how to optimize software deployment and testing using these technologies. So I think there's a lot we can learn, not only from sharing in a telco industry, but also in a much larger industry. And I think the openness aspect, as Mattias just mentioned, within the company and communicating is super important. We see many examples where the transformation is mainly driven from a technology point of view, and then it stops. And I think that doesn't resonate in many cases with the operations teams very, very well. We need to look at this in a more holistic way, and then getting better every day and getting better with every change we do. I think what's crucial down the road is that we find and define the right metrics to see how are we improving, with the changes we deliver and the agility we bring into the system, to have these metrics and understand where we're getting better.
Great, thanks, Peter. And as you say, we're often advised to look beyond telco at other industries for inspiration and knowledge. We'll come to Mirko in a moment, but first of all, let me go across to Matt. Matt, let's hear your views.
So I kind of want to build upon the term around roadmap, because this is a journey from my perspective, and different telcos are at different levels of maturity, and we have to understand that. And the telco domain is quite wide, all the way from the tier one operators who are at least view themselves as quite advanced and knowledgeable in this space, through to the more digital MVNOs, which really, they don't care about technology. They have a business goal. They're very clear on their metrics, and they're all about time to market. So understanding where the maturity of the operator is as a vendor is important, and then understanding how you can work with them in an open way. So not purely just open technology, but in terms of making sure your solution is somewhat nearly cloud agnostic. So you're not exclusive to one standardization versus another. You're basically following, as some of the panelists said, the best practices and principles, but you're also inserting yourself at the point of their maturity. And you're more operating like a partner in their cloud ecosystem versus this vendor-customer relationship. So being able to drop in at the right point in their roadmap strategy and their level of maturity, because I think it was also mentioned, they're starting at different points, and this is a journey. It is not an endpoint, and 5-10 years on, because NFV is not a new thing, CNF is not a new thing. This will evolve, and we'll be here next year as well talking about it. But I think making sure that you can basically address to their level of maturity is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guarantee we'll be here next year addressing it as well. You're right there. Okay, Mirko, let's come across to you for some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I just want to share something regarding our experience so far. I think approaching the problem with an intent to move from a fully on-prem traditional IT stack to a cloud-native application 100% is not a practical approach. So what we found out and originally already had in mind from the beginning is that it's more of a hybrid approach. Some applications we have, and I appreciate what Mattias said about 100+ applications. we also started, and we're still somewhere in the journey of moving some of these applications. Some applications are suitable for a transition to a fully cloud native approach. Some others just can simply be moved to the cloud. That means they stay more or less as they are, and in that way, maybe you're not going to be able to fully benefit from a cloud native approach, but it is what it is. Some applications cannot be changed. In some others are also maybe so old and legacy that you are not going to even bother about moving them. So we're ending up with a hybrid approach. Some of it, and I think over time, the more we'll shift to a cloud native environment, but it's going to be a very long journey.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Mirko. Tricky question, this one, but does a telco need its own unique partner ecosystem, or can it leverage existing communities, for example, with ready-made bundles and pre-integrations? And also, how can it best support this ecosystem? Matt, let's come across to you first for your thoughts on the question about ecosystems.
I think it depends which type of telco is asking that question or what angle you're coming from. And I don't think there's a single answer, as you kind of touched upon. For me, standardization is very important from the telco's perspective to ensure they get the scale. I think, Partha mentioned at the start, one of the big benefits for cloud, not even cloud native, but the adoption of cloud is standardization. So a standard way to manage, to deploy, to upgrade, to monitor, to trace your applications, to manage your applications. That promise of giving you the operational benefit, the same life cycle management, that's only achievable if you standardize. But is there one standard? Most definitely not, because that would go against the whole point of openness and open architectures. So choosing the right standard is important. Do you go and adopt a main player? Really interesting question. I think, again, tier ones, tier twos, yes. MVNOs, for me, as an example of a slightly different type of domain of operator, they will just go for best of suite. And they will look to adopt, in my view, the cloud standardization that vendor provides. Whereas the tier ones and tier twos will go for best of breed and also drive a best of breed cloud standardization in that regard as well. So I think there's not a straightforward answer to it. In terms of the tooling, well, again, I think you also have to decide, are you adopting a private cloud or a public cloud strategy? Or even, I think somebody inferred earlier, maybe hybrid model. And it depends on the business case and also the business or the telco that you're dealing with. So probably not the ideal answer because it's not a black and white answer, but I think it has to be based upon the actual situation. But standardization as a whole is fundamental for cloud adoption.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much for that, Matt. Let's go next to Mattias. Mattias, what do you think of the ecosystem conundrum?
Yeah, no, I think most of the old ecosystem we had, we could probably leverage and still use. But I think there's an element of this that is new to us. A lot of people in our IT department have been here a long time, and now suddenly we're supposed to work in an open environment. You're supposed to share ideas with others. Many people feel that a lot of things we're doing is kind of secret to us, and the only one that should see this is us. But I think we have to learn over time that that's not the way it works. There are stuff that is secret for us, but doing this and helping the overall community and getting help from the overall community is a very big and new thing. So for us, it was very important that we got a couple of new people in who came from this environment, understood this environment, told us, it's no danger to share this development because, overall, we're just going to benefit and the whole industry is going to benefit. And I think, therefore, our ecosystem had to grow a bit with some more partners, some more new ways of working, and therefore some new key employees here who could really help us thinking this new way. Because most of us, or many of us, have been here a long time, and it's always like, if you share something, someone is going to steal something from you. That's not the way it works anymore. And I think that was a new thing for us, and therefore our ecosystem had to expand a bit.
Mattias, great. That's Thanks for the comments there. We're going to move across to Peter next, and we'll come back to Matt. But Peter, your thoughts?
I really like the notion of sharing in an ecosystem. And I think that's a very, very crucial point here to make that cloud native ecosystem we see there really successful for all the players in the industry. We're all using the same tooling and technology ecosystem at this point in time. We're building our applications on top of that. And there will be players which really build a best of breed, customized solution. But I think there's a lot of value in integrated and verified technology stacks, which really then allows operators, communication service providers to focus on the transformation more on the operational side. And they don't have to deal with the technology specifics and finding the correct vendors and the correct players for their technology stack. They can rely on a trusted partner to focus and put their efforts in the operational transformation, which really helps them then to gain the benefits and to gain the efficiency they need.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much, Peter. And let's quickly go back over to Matt to wrap up this particular question.
Yeah, it's just something that one of the other panelists sparked a thought in my mind, which was, and we haven't talked about it yet, is the actual hyperscalers. For me, their actual introduction has been a positive advancement in this space and actually helped move it along as well. And to the point that was earlier made, their adoption and their drive for openness, while they have their own ecosystems, has benefited a lot of us as application vendors. And I know a lot of the telcos may see them as threats, but actually, many of us see them as a benefit and something that's helping drive towards what I think is a more fully complete cloud native architecture.
Interesting. Thanks very much, Matt. Yes, indeed. Different opinions on the role and the value of hyperscaler partnerships with telcos, which we'll go into later, but not today. I want to ask one final question to you, though, and that is, for a telco about to embark on the cloud native journey, should the telco take small steps first, perhaps with internal testbed deployments, or is it better if it goes all in for a rapid implementation? Peter, from your experience, what are you seeing, and what's happening from your perspective?
So really happy to answer this particular question, since I've been working with quite a lot of our customers spearheading that transformation, and I've worked a long time with our own R&D organization, transforming from traditional R&D organizations to really become cloud native and also deliver cloud native applications. And particularly what we've seen with some of the spearheading operators is that they typically start with either a small team looking at maybe a particular node in the network or a particular system, or they look at some parts of a particular process they have and adopt cloud native technologies in that process. But overall, what is super important is that we don't do a big bang technology introduction and leave all the other areas in terms of operations, ways of working, processes untouched. I think we've seen that with network function virtualization, where we've pushed a lot for a particular technology stack, which had its merits and gained a lot, and we got a lot out of this, but we kept the operations a bit aside. And I think what we've seen our successful operators or our successful partners are doing at the moment is looking at small areas which they can transform, but then do the transformation in a holistic way and transform both technology, get cloud native applications in, ways of workings, and the tooling they use around it. And that takes a lot of effort understanding that, but that also gives you the best insight in understanding what are the benefits you can gain, how do you adopt your process, because that's very specific to communication service providers. And maybe let me just share one additional thought here, is that what we've seen is that, for example, software delivery, software deployment, as I think we heard in one of the answers to the first question, is really something which changes in cloud native or with cloud native delivery model. And I think here we also see massive gains to be taken in how efficiently we can handle software. So one aspect here is to separate the lifecycle management of the software and how we manage that and move that into fully cloud native space, and then have stable abstractions into how we manage the functionality in the network, where we see a much slower evolution at this at this point in time. So we help the organization to transform the software lifecycle, gain the efficiency from that, but then have a slightly more adapted pace when it comes to managing the actual functionality of the network and the traditional network functions, so to say.
Great. Thanks for sharing those observations with us, Peter. We are approaching the end of our program, but I do want to hear first from Mirko. So, Mirko, let's come across to you as to your advice, whether telcos should take small steps or perhaps go all in.
Yeah, from our experience, I think one of the challenge that we haven't talked about yet is the fact that it's hard to prove the return on investment of this kind of transformative projects, especially if they're quite big. And I think it helps to take an approach where you start maybe smaller on a certain area, could be a certain project. We actually did that with our network as a service proposition. Our Colt on demand was built in a cloud native manner, and it was the first project that we took really to market in this manner. And that helps then set the scene for the rest of the changes. I think in general, a big bang approach, there is lots of statistic, anecdotal, and measurable out there that shows that there is a tendency of those projects to become too big and to fail because of the sheer size of it, the tendency of boiling the ocean. So even if you want to take that approach, I think taking a step-by-step approach within that long-term vision is important.
Great, thank you very much, Mirko. Well, we must leave it there for now, but I am sure we will continue this debate during our live Q&A show later. For now, though, thank you all for taking part in our discussion. Now, if you're watching this on day one of our Cloud Native Telco Summit, then please send us your questions and we'll answer them in our live Q&A show, which is coming up soon. And don't forget to view the other panel discussions and keynote interviews in this year's summit. Here's the agenda for today, and the full schedule of programs and speakers can be found on the Cloud Native Telco Summit section of the TelecomTV website. And please download our exclusive Cloud Native research report from my colleague Ray Lemaitre. For now though, thanks for watching and goodbye.